Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. Welcome to Swarup IT Learning Solutions. So, this is the next video in this particular technical video series. So, in this particular video, we will learn how to install and configure SEPM, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager version 14.3. So, we will practically execute following steps in this particular video. First, we will be having an introduction to SEPM. What is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager? What are its features? What are its architecture components? This will be a theoretical session. Second, of course, we will be creating our Symantec antivirus server lab setup, virtual machines, that is server plus LAN through Hyper-V. Third is we will be trying to understand and implement and configure the SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager's communication port matrix. Fourth is we will be installing our SQL server for SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager database requirement. And fifth is, of course, we will be actually installing our SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, on our server system. Okay, so this will be a kind of a bit long video, but do watch it from start to end if you want to understand the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. So let's start. So introduction to the Symantec Endpoint Protection. So what is Symantec Endpoint Protection? So Symantec Endpoint Protection, that is SEP, is a comprehensive security solution designed to protect laptops, desktops, and servers in a network from a wide range of cybersecurity threats. It offers both virus protection and advanced threat protection, making it effective at guarding against both known and unknown dangers. So these threats include traditional malware like viruses, worms, Trojan, horses, and adware, as well as more sophisticated attacks such as rootkits, zero-day exploits, and muting spyware. So what are the features for Symantec Endpoint Protections? So key features of Symantec Endpoint Protections include, first is of course malware protection. So SEP detects and blocks malicious softwares including viruses and spyware, helping to prevent infections across the network. Second is advanced threat protection. It provides protection against complex and evolving threats such as zero-day attacks and rootkits that evade traditional detection methods. Third is behavioral protection. So SCP can monitor the behavior of applications to detect suspicious activities, thereby blocking potential threats even before they are formally identified. 4 is low maintenance and high performance. The system is designed for minimum resource consumption, providing high security with little impact on system performance. So the key features of Symantec Endpoint Protection continues. The fifth one is virtual and physical system support. So SCP extends protection not only on physical endpoints, that is laptops and desktops or servers, but also to virtual environments, ensuring comprehensive security across your infrastructure. Next is centralized management. So it offers a centralized management console for easy deployment, configuration, and monitoring of security across the network, allowing for simplified management of client computers and servers. And next feature is cloud integration. So SAP can be integrated with cloud-based services to enhance its detection and response capabilities, leveraging cloud intelligence to stay ahead of emerging threats. So Symantec Endpoint Protection is designed to ensure the robust security with minimal administrative efforts, allowing IT teams to focus on other critical tasks, while SEP automatically protects the organization's devices and data. So now we will try to understand what are the architecture components of Symantec Endpoint Protection. So the Symantec Endpoint Protection, that is SEP architecture, is designed with a set of functional components that work together to provide the comprehensive security management. So these components fall into three main functional groups, but there are 5 subcategories of these functional groups. So first is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, of course, which we will be installing by end of this particular video. Second is Symantec Endpoint Protection Client, that is the most common component which all the computers are using. Now these clients can be standalone or can be a managed one. So we will see in the part 2 of this video, because this part 1 will be a let's say quite longer, so I will be planning to make a part 2 of this particular video where we will be actually deploying our SEP client through our SEPM, and we will be managing it, and we will try to learn how to install the standalone SEP client also. So next component is live update administrator. What is live update administrator? We will see it in a bit of time. I will cover each of this particular component in detail, so don't worry about it. So next component is group update provider, that is GUP, and then last one is a Symantec Endpoint Security Cloud Console. So we will now dive deeper into each component of Symantec Endpoint Protection, which plays a central role in the architecture. So architecture components continues in detail now. Now we will cover the first one, the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, SEPM. Okay, this is what the purpose of this particular video. We will be installing our SEPM. So what is SEPM? So the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager is a core management server responsible for overseeing the operation of SEP in a network. So it serves as the control center for managing security policies, client registration, and handling events. So SEPM is responsible for configuring and enforcing policies, distributing updates, and gathering data related to security events and system health. So the SEPM includes several key subcomponents. So what are those subcomponents? First subcomponent is of course the management server software. So the function of the management server software, this software is responsible for managing the communication between the endpoint client, i.e. the computers and servers protected by SEP, and Symantec Endpoint Protection Console. So it is managing the communication between your client and your management server, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Console. So its role, it ensures secure communication, managing policies, updates, and event logs from client endpoints to the server, that is your SEPM server. Now, next subcomponent for SEPM only is of course the actual console. So it functions as the user interface that allows administrators to interact with SEPM, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. It acts as an administrative hub for managing SEP policies and settings. Now, what are the capabilities of SEPM console? First capability of course is the security policies. Admin can create and enforce security rules and configuration for all the managed clients. Client management. So admins can add, remove, and configure clients in the network. Third is reports and logs. The console provides access to event logs, reports on security incidents, and client health status. We'll try to cover all those things practically in a part 2, where we will be actually deploying the security policies and how to install the client through push deployment and everything. Next capability is roles and access. Administrator can define different roles and access permissions for different users or groups, improving management flexibility. And the last one is remote console. A remote version of a console allows administrators to manage SEPM from any connected device, making it easier to manage distributed environment. We will try to see how we can log into the remote console also. So this is the first subcomponent. Next subcomponent is of course the most important one, the Symantec Endpoint Protection Client. So SEP client is a software component that provides endpoint security for devices within an organization's network. It aims to protect endpoints such as desktops, laptops, and servers from malware, ransomware, and other security threats. So here are the key aspects of how the SEP client works. First one is security protection. Of course, the SEP client continuously monitors the system for any signs of malicious activity. It includes features like antivirus and anti-malware. So it detects and removes viruses, spyware, trojans, worms, and other types of malware. So next feature is firewall and protection. So it blocks unauthorized network traffic and uh, from endpoint. Next is intrusion prevention system, that is IPS, detects and prevents attacks on the network layer. Next is device control. So it manages the use of external devices such as USB devices to prevent unauthorized data access of or transfers. Next is advanced machines learning. AML and cloud-based detection helps in identifying new and evolving threats in real time. So these are the features for the security protection. Now the next working is policy and content updates. So policies, the SEP client downloads security policies from Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager SEPM server, and policies defines how the client should protect the endpoint, including what actions to take when threats are detected. So example given is whether the threat will be quarantine or it will be removed or it will be ignored. Next is content. So in addition to policies, the SEP client may download content updates, which includes the latest virus definitions, signatures, threat intelligence. So these updates ensure that the endpoint can recognize and defend against the latest threats. The Semantic Endpoint Protection client component continues. So the next feature is cross-platform support. So the SAP client is designed to run on multiple operating systems, including of course the Windows, the most common one, the most common platform for endpoint protection in enterprise environments. Then the Mac OS, SEP also provides protection for Mac OS devices which are increasingly used in business. And the next is Linux. So SEP has a version that works on Linux based servers and workstations. I will try to integrate the Mac OS and Linux OS installation in Hyper-V in upcoming video series, and within that particular series I will try to install the SEP client also on those machines, Mac and Linux, but that will be my future plan, just to update you. Now next feature for SEP client is centralized management. So the SEP client is managed by Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, can be managed, which is the central console for monitoring and administrating all SEP clients within an organization. So the SEPM enables administrators to configure security policies, monitor endpoint health, and receive alerts for potential security incidents. Next feature is performance and resource efficiency. So SAP is designed to minimize its impact on system performance while still offering robust protection. It uses lightweight real-time scanning and historic detection methods to balance security and performance. Next is reporting and login. So the SAP client maintains detailed logs of security events such as blocked threads or successful policy updates. So these logs can be reviewed by system administrators for troubleshooting or auditing purposes. And the last one is of course the self-protection, which is the core component of SAP client. So SAP client includes mechanisms to prevent it from being disabled or uninstalled by unauthorized users, providing an additional layer of security against tampering. So this is the second architecture component what we have reviewed. Let's move on to the next architecture components. Remember, we have reviewed 5 architecture components. So the third one is live update administrator. So the internal live update server in Symantec Endpoint Protection. What is its purpose? So an internal live update server is used to download updates including definitions, signatures, and other contents, and then distribute those updates to client computers within the organization. So this is typically done to streamline the update process and ensure that all endpoint devices within the network are kept up to date with the latest security content. So as I said, in the upcoming practicals we will see how live update administrator is working, how can I download it, the latest virus definitions from SEPM console, and how those updates are getting distributed on client computers even though the client computers are not having internet access. It will be through network only. So what are the benefits for this live update administrator? So reduce load on SAP manager. So by using the internal live update server, you can reduce the amount of traffic and workload on Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager server, as clients do not need to contact the external Symantec servers for updates. Instead, they will fetch updates from the internal server, which can be much more efficient, especially in large organizations. So next is network efficiency. So an internal live update server can cache updates locally so that all client machines on the network can access the updates without requiring individual internet access. So as I said before, so this reduces the load of internet bandwidth and makes updates more accessible to client systems. Next benefit, of course, is multiple Symantec products. So if your organizations uses multiple Symantec products that also rely on live update, such as Symantec Endpoint Protection or Symantec Antivirus or other Symantec security softwares. So using a single internal live update server for all products ensures that the updates are for all Symantec products are distributed from a central source, simplifying update management. So live update administrator continues. So how it works, how live update administrator or how live update feature is working. So live update administrator LUA is the tool used to manage the internal live update server. It downloads the necessary definitions and updates from Symantec servers on the internet. Content distribution. So the downloaded content, e.g. virus definitions or signatures or software updates, is then distributed from the internal server to the client systems within the network. So how it is getting scheduled and configured? So you can schedule when live update should run on the internal server to minimize the impact on network performance and ensure that updates are applied at appropriate intervals. So when to use an internal live update server? So large networks, if your organization has a large number of SEP clients or multiple locations, using an internal live update server can drastically reduce the bandwidth load and improve the speed of delivering the updates. So if you are having multiple Symantec products, as mentioned earlier, if you are using other Symantec security products alongside SEP, centralizing updates through an internal live update server helps maintain consistency across all products and simplifies management. So if you are having limited internet connectivity in organizations with limited or expensive internet bandwidth, an internal live update server provides a more controlled and efficient way to manage updates. So the next component, this is the third component what we have covered. Next component, the fourth one, is a group policy update, that is GUP. So the group update provider is a feature in Symantec Endpoint Protection that helps distribute virus definitions and updates to client computers within an organization, particularly in a scenario where clients are located in remote or branch offices with limited bandwidth. So what is the purpose of group update providers? Reducing the bandwidth load. So by using a GUP, remote locations doesn't need to pull updates directly from the central management server, that is SEPM, over the internet or a slow connection. Instead, the GUP downloads updates from the central server once and then distributes them to local clients. So this reduces the overall bandwidth consumption since only one client in the remote group fetches updates from the management server. So efficiency in remote locations. So GUPs are especially useful in organizations with multiple remote locations where establishing an internal live update server would be complex or costly. Instead of each remote client reaching out to the central server individually, a single GUP acts as a local update provider, ensuring that all clients in the group stay up to date. So let's say I have created a group where there are 15 clients. Example I'm just giving. One client will download the updates using the GUP feature, and the rest 14 clients will automatically get those updates from that particular first client. So no need to contact your SCPM server for all 15 clients. So the group policy update GUPs continues. So the advantage of the GUP is scalability. So organizations with many clients can use GUPs to minimize the load on the central management server, as the GUP can handle update distribution to multiple clients in its designated group. So this reduces the frequency of request to the SEPM, improving performance and scalability. So next benefit is simplified setup. So compared to setting up an internal live update server, a GUP is much simpler to configure and maintain. So a GUP can be any client machine within the network. So as I said, typically a Windows machine, which makes it a more cost-effective solution for organizations with many endpoints, especially those operating on a tight budget. Now we have come to the last subcomponent, that is Symantec Endpoint Security Cloud Console. So Symantec Endpoint Security SES is a comprehensive security management solution designed to protect and manage the endpoint devices, offering flexibility through cloud or hybrid and on-premises deployment models. So below is the breakdown of the key points you mentioned. So deployment options for the Symantec Endpoint Security for the Cloud Console. The Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, of course, is on-premises only. So this is the traditional on-premises solution where Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager is installed and managed locally within the organization's infrastructure. So this version offers centralized control and suitable for business that prefer to manage their endpoints from within their own data centers. Next is hybrid model, so on-premises and cloud. So this model combines the on-premises Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager and cloud-based Symantec Endpoint Security SES. So it allows organizations to leverage both local and cloud-based management, which can provide the flexibility or enterprises with specific requirements such as legacy infrastructure or gradual cloud adoption. So Symantec Endpoint Security Cloud Console continues. So Symantec Endpoint Security Cloud only. This is the third type, the third model. So this is the fully cloud managed solution where all the endpoints protections and management tasks are handled through the Symantec Cloud platform, offering scalability and remote management. It's ideal for businesses that prefer a cloud first approach and want to streamline management without the need for on-premises hardware. So it is integrated with the Symantec Integrated Cyber Defense Manager, that is a particular component. So what is ICDM? So ICDM acts as a central platform for Symantec's cloud and on-premises products, providing unified visibility and control over security policies, alerts and threats across various environments. So with ICDM, Symantec Endpoint Security integrates seamlessly with other Symantec security products such as web, email and network security, offering a comprehensive unified security framework that supports both cloud and on-premises infrastructures. So Symantec Endpoint Security Cloud-based console continues. So key benefits of cloud managed Symantec Endpoint Security. First one is scalability. Of course, the easily scale security protection across an organization without needing to manage the infrastructure or hardware. Next is remote management. ID administrators can manage and monitor endpoints from anywhere, ensuring that endpoint protection remains consistent and up to date. Next benefit is unified console. The cloud console provides centralized management for all security policies, alerts, and threat detections across both on-premises and cloud environments. Next is automation. Cloud-based security can provide automated updates, threat intelligence, and security actions to minimize the manual intervention and response time. Now we have covered all the basic theoretical aspects and components for the SEP, Semantic Endpoint Protection. Now the next important part is Semantic Endpoint Protection port matrix. What are the ports which are required for Semantic Endpoint Protection and what are its uses? So this is a kind of a table what I have prepared. So you can see over here the protocol number and protocol and port number I have mentioned over here, and what are its usage. Then what is the actual listening process over here, what is the description of this particular port usage, and the applicable versions. So first is TCP 139, 445, UDP 137, 138. So all those four ports are used for push deployment from Semantic Endpoint Protection to Windows computers. Listening process is svhost.exe and description is initiated by Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, that is client remote.exe, and this particular ports are not configurable, means you have to open these ports, those cannot be bypassed to other ports. Also uses the TCP emphasizable ports. So applicable versions for these particular ports opening, all Symantec endpoint client versions, these ports are applicable. Okay. Next is of course TCP/22 push deployment for Symantec Endpoint Protection to Mac computers. Just like Windows, the Mac computers uses TCP/22. So listening process is launch T, and again it is initiated by the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager client. And versions, applicable versions are all. TCP/2967. So it is used for group update providers. We have just seen what is GUP. So web caching proxy functionality. The listening process is CCSVC host, then initiated by endpoint protection clients. It is configurable. Applicable versions are all. TCP/2968 web and cloud access protection, cloud and client authentication. Again the CCSV host, initiated by Symantec Endpoint Protection clients. It is configurable and versions are 14.2 and later. So this is a bit different. Sorry. Next is TCP/238. So communication between the automatically installed database and Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. So the database what SEPM uses, it is using this particular TCP/238 for its communication purpose. So the listening process is SQL server.exe, Express database, that is Express version 14.3 RU1 and later, and then dbsrv16.exe, embedded database 14.3 MP1 and earlier, initiated by the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Okay, and it is configurable and applicable versions are all. Next is of course TCP/1433, communication between a remote SQL server database and Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. The listening process is SQL server.exe, initiated by your SEPM, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. It is configurable. The Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager management server also uses TCP ephemeral ports. So applicable versions are all. Next port is TCP/8443, so server communication, that is HTTPS. So listening process is semsvc.exe. All logon information and administrative communication takes place using the secure port. So initiated by the Java based remote console or web based remote console or by replication partners. So it is configurable and it is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager listens to this port. Okay, applicable versions are all. Next is TCP/9090. So it is for the web console communication. So whenever you are logging through your web console through SCPM, so the listening process is same svc.exe. So this port is used for initial HTTP communication between the remote management console and the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. So these initial components or communications includes installation and to display the logon screen only. It is initiated by the remote web console and it is configurable and also uses the TCP enforceable ports. Of course, applicable versions are all. Next is TCP 8014, so communication between the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager and the Symantec Endpoint Protection Client. Okay, its listening process is httpd.exe, that is for Apache, and initiated by the Symantec Endpoint Protection Clients. Configurable clients also use TCP enforceable ports, and applicable versions are all. Next is TCP 443. These are the same ports used for different purposes. So first purpose is communication between the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager and the Symantec Endpoint Protection Client. So httpd.exe, that is Apache, then initiated by the Symantec Endpoint Protection Client, and it is configurable. Okay, client uses the TCP ports. The applicable versions are all. Next is communication between the endpoint protection and the cloud console. It is using the same port and the process is purnsvr.exe. So for information for each domains to add proxy bypass list for the cloud console. Applicable versions are all. Now this is the last page for this particular port matrix. So HTTPS 443, this is particular port which is being used for communication between the Symantec Endpoint Protection roaming client and the cloud console. Listening process, since it's a cloud based, so no local services or listening process. And the description is managed clients that have intermediate communication with Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager upload their critical events directly to the cloud console. So Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager must be enrolled with the cloud. So this is a cloud service and version is 14.2 and later. Next is HTTP 8081 and 8082. So communication between the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager and the content analysis server appliance. Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager's listening process itself. The management server uses this port to communicate with the content analysis server on the malware analysis appliance. So it is applicable for 14.2 all the versions only, and it is depreciated. This particular port usage is depreciated in 14.3. Next is TCP 8445. So used by the remote reporting console. Listening process is httpd.exe. So initiated by the reporting console and it is configurable. It is applicable to all versions. Next is TCP 8446. So it is being used for the web services. The listening process is SEM API SRV.exe. The description is remote management applications use this port to send the services traffic over HTTPS. So it is initiated by the remote monitoring and management RMM and by EDR. So it is configurable and used for Java remote console. Applicable versions are all. The last port now TCP 8447. So it is a process launcher and the listening process is SEM launch srv.exe. This virtual service account launches any Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager processes that requires higher privileges so that these other services do not need to have them. Only owner's request from the local host. So initiated by the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, that is SEPM cmsvc.exe, and it is configurable and it is applicable to all versions. Now this may look a very long session for theoretical, but I want you guys to understand all the theoretical concepts before we are actually diving to the practical steps. We are giving the less preference to the theoretical parts, but unless you are having your theoretical base clear, you will not be able to understand what we are doing and why we are doing. Okay, so that's why I have just covered all these theoretical concepts. Maybe a bit longer session, but this is important. If you want to again listen and understand all these concepts, do reverse this video and listen to it again. Now we will be actually doing the practicals or lab setups for SEPM. So welcome back. Now we have covered our theoretical concepts for SEPM. Now we will be starting our actual practicals. So what are the prerequisites for our SEPM lab setup? The first one is of course Windows 2022 server, Windows 10 and Windows 11 operating systems ISOs. Then a physical system Hyper-V host with at least 64 GB RAM. So my physical system is having 128 GB RAM. What will be our lab setup? So our lab setup will be consisting 5 systems. First is our Hyper-V host, that is physical machine running on Windows 2022 data center server. Role will be Hyper-V host, that is physical. Hardware configuration is 1 TB hard disk and then i7 latest CPU, 128 GB RAM. Its local IP will be 10111. System module is physical server or workstation. Next is Windows 2022 DC, that is our running on 2022 data center server, that is our Active Directory domain controller, and it will be a virtual machine. So the hardware configuration is 100 GB VHD, then virtual CPU and 24 GB RAM, and then the IP is 10.1.100. The system or is virtual machine. Next is the main system, which will be acting as an SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager server. So it will be again running on Windows 2022 data center server, and it is actually rolling on the SEPM architecture, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager server. The configuration will be same: 100 GB hard disk, virtual CPU, and then 24 GB RAM. Its IP will be 10.1.1.10. System module is virtual machine. And the next two machines are your client machines. One is running on Windows 10, one is running on Windows 11. So Win 10CL, Win 11CL. So it will be acting as an Active Directory and SEV client, that is Symantec antivirus client. And their hardware configurations are identical to each other, and they will be getting the IPs from the DHCP. That your Active Directory domain controller will be acting as your DHCP server also. And both machines are virtual machines. So this will be our lab setup in brief. So how our logical infrastructure will be getting up on the Symantec Endpoint Protection. So it is an infrastructure logical diagram. It looks like a spider web, but don't worry, I will explain it. So the logical diagram consists, the first machine is of course your Hyper-V host, the physical machine. Its IP will be 10.1.1, and this Hyper-V connectivity, you can see over here I have given different colors for the connectivity lines. So Hyper-V connectivity, so this is the Hyper-V host, then Hyper-V connectivity is green, so it is connected, the Hyper-V console is connected, the clients are connected to Hyper-V server using this green connectivity. So it is connected to every machine, all 1, 2, 3, 4, all those 4 machines are connected with the Hyper-V, that is your main host. So green 1, 2, 3, 4, just look upon the green connectivity only, that is your Hyper-V connectivity. Now next is Active Directory connectivity. Now the Hyper-V host doesn't need to connect to your AD server, that is your virtual machine. So Hyper-V connectivity is with the red line. So the red line is going to 1, 2, 3, 4. It itself connect with the AD domain controller, then 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. This one machine is connected to other 3 machines using your AD connectivity, and the same thing applies for your Symantec connectivity, which is in orange. So but who is the primary source for Symantec connectivity? Your SEPM server, right? So SEPM's connectivity goes to itself first, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3 apart from the SEPM itself, just like an AD itself, other 3 machines, and like same way SEPM and other 3 machines. Okay, I hope you understood the connectivity concepts for this. So all those 4 machines are connected with each other with different means and different features. Okay, so this is just a logical diagram I have just created for the SEPM architecture. Okay, now what are the steps we have already covered? Okay, so I don't want to make this particular video very lengthy, so I have already covered some of the practical steps. Now what are the steps we have already covered? So first we have created a fresh Windows 2022 DCVM. So I will just show you the first step only, and then again I will come back to the second step what we have covered, and I will show that one also. So I am going to my DC system. This is my virtual machine. So I have created a fresh virtual machine called Windows 2022 DC. Okay, so I will just show you the host name of it. So you can see the host name is Win 2022 DC. Okay, so this is the fresh VM what we have covered. Okay, next step is we have made it as an DNS server, AD domain controller, that is SSMCB.local, and DHCP server. So all those 3 features we have already installed on particular this Win 2022 DC. How can I verify that? So I will go to server manager. You can see over here the consoles. DNS is also there. It is a prerequisite for AD Active Directory. We have already configured the forward lookup zones and reverse lookup zones. So this is the first feature we have installed, DNS. Next feature is of course the main Active Directory users, Active Directory domain controllers features. So I will just open the normal console of Active Directory users and computers just to give you a reference. This one. So our domain name is sccmcblab.local. We have already created that particular domain. Okay, and the next feature is DHCP. So we have installed the DHCP service also. We have configured our DHCP scopes so that any client which is connected to this domain will get the IP address automatically from our AD server only, that is your DHCP server also. So we have created the scopes also. Our address pool is 10.1.1 to 10.1.1 to 54. The exclusions are there. So any client machine will get the DHCP server IP starting from 151. Okay, so I will show you how the clients also got the IP addresses. Okay, so this is also configured. Now this is the second portion what we have already covered. The third one is we have already created an AD account as SCCM admin and making it as a domain plus enterprise plus schema admin. So this is a one master account I have already created. I have logged in with the SCCM admin only. You can see over here, this is the command prompt with the current user credential, SCCM admin. So if I'm going to the Active Directory users and computers and I'm going to the users, so I will go to the properties of this system admin and I will show you it's a member of domain admins, enterprise admins and schema admins. So invariably it is a second administrator or equal to administrator account for this sccmcblab.local domain. Why I have created, as I told in my previous videos also, you need to set up a second admin account, always preferable. Do not use the original administrator account. Okay, original administrator account, keep it as a safe locker or keep it as a backup account in case anything goes wrong, and always use a second master account. You can give as many rights as you want to this master account. Okay, so this also we have already created. Next is we have already created 3 fresh virtual machines, 3 more virtual machines. So their names are SEPM, Win10CL and Win11CL, and we have already joined them to this particular domain also. So sccmcb.local domain. So I will just show you one of the machines. So this is a fresh machine SEPM on which we will be installing our SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager software. But this is currently a fresh VM. It is only having Windows 2022 Data Center OS installed and it has joined to domain. Let me just show you. So if I'm going to the advanced system setting, I'm going to the computer, you can see over here it is already joined to the SEPM. Its FQDN shows SEPM, that is its host name, .sccmcblab.local. So it has already joined to the domain also. Okay, so this is a fresh server operating system, and the other two virtual machines also I have created, that is Windows 11 CL. This is also joined to a domain. If I am going to the advanced system setting, computer name, this has also joined to the domain Windows 11. It will be acting as an AD client as well as our SCP client. Okay, this is the second machine, and the third and the last one is of course Win10 CL. So I will go to Win10 CL also and quickly show you it has also joined to the domain. So you can see it is also joined to the domain. So these are the practical steps what we have already covered. If you want to learn how to install the Active Directory, how the clients can be joined to Active Directory domain, you can refer to my previous videos from Sarup IT Solutions. Okay, and the last step is we have already installed the .NET 3.5 and .NET 4.8 on SEPM server as SQL 2022 server prerequisite. Okay, so I will just show you that step also what we have already covered. So I am going to the server manager. And now I will click on add roles and features. Next, next. This is SEPM. Next, next. And you can see over here the .NET Framework 3.5 and ASP.NET 4.8. Both components have been installed. So this particular step we have already covered. So I'm just closing this window now. Let's move on to our next step. So the next and final step that we have already covered is we have added the SCCM admin as part of local admin group on all above three systems. So on all three, that is SCPM, Windows 10 CL and Windows 11 CL, I have added SCCM admin in a local admin group just to give that particular account an excessive admin access. Okay, so I'm going to administrators group. You can see SCCM admin. Same I have added on rest of the two systems also. Okay, we will quickly verify that one also. This is Win10 CL. And then SCCM admin, and then the last machine is Windows 11 CL. Close this. Computer management, local users, groups, administrators. Okay, so SCCM admin. So these are all steps I have already covered before starting this particular video. Okay, so finally we will be now doing our practical lab setup. So step number 1, log into Win 2022 DC through SCCM admin account, and through server manager tools open group policy management. So we'll go to my SCPM server, sorry, not SCPM, I will go to my AD server, close this, and through server manager I will go to my Active Directory, sorry, group policy management. So So on Win 2022 DC, we have already logged in through SSM admin. Now we need to open the group policy management. So this is the group policy management. Okay. Next is from group policy management window, expand the forest ssmcb.local, then domains, right click on ssmcb.local domain and select create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Okay, so I will right click, create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Okay, and next step is we need to give the name for the new GPO as SEPM services and then click OK. And then we need to right click the newly created policy and edit it. So I will just give the name. Say OK. And now you can see the SEPM services, the group policy object has been created. Right click and I will say edit. Now next step is we need to go to the Windows firewall with advanced security option in order to allow certain ports for the SEPM and SEP communication. So through group policy editor window, expand the computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, and then Windows Defender firewall with advanced security option. So I will go to the computer configuration, I will go to the policies, I will go to the Windows settings, I will go to security settings, and I will go to Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security, and this is the sub option Windows Defender Firewall. We'll expand it, and now we need to create inbound as well as outbound rules. So we'll move on to the next step. So right click the inbound group and select new rule predefined and select services as file and printer sharing. Now this is the first service what we need to enable in the Windows firewall, because we are running in an Active Directory infrastructure. So all your communication, client communications, all your network communication has been controlled by Active Directory. So we are giving some rules exceptions or rule openings, inbound and outbound rules in Active Directory. Okay, try to understand it. If you are not using Active Directory in your infrastructure, you need to enable those ports through your firewall. Okay, or both can be true. If you are using AD also, if you are using firewall also, which should be the case for most of the organizations, you need to allow those ports through AD also and through firewall also. So in this case we are allowing through AD only. So right click on inbound rule and I will say new rule, and then predefine, and what it is saying, select the services as file and printer sharing. So I will select file and printer sharing. Okay, so leave all the rules selected and click next. Select allow the connection option and click finish. So we are actually allowing file and printer sharing through our firewall. So all the options are selected. I will say next, allow the connection, I will say finish. Okay, so you can see the inbound rule has been created, which is actually allowing all the services related to file and printer sharing. Now next step is right click on outbound group now, and then we will say new rule and predefine, and again we will select file and printer sharing. So we have created the inbound rule, now we need to create the outbound rule. Okay, so I will say new rule predefine and file and printer sharing. Next, Next is leave all the rules selected and click next. Select allow the connection and click finish. So all the rules have been automatically selected. I will say next. Now here by default it is blocked, so be careful, we need to allow it. So I will say allow the connection and finish. So by default when you are creating an outbound rule, block the connection option is automatically selected. By creating the inbound rule, allow the connection is automatically selected. So make sure you are selecting a correct option while outbound also. Okay, so allow the connection, I will say finish. You can see the outbound rules and inbound rules, both have been created for file and printer sharing. Okay, now next step is we need to repeat these steps for one more service to create a new inbound and outbound group rules for WMI, Windows Management Instrument Service. Okay, so now why WMI is required? Because most of the clients, SEPM clients, SAP clients, or any particular network client is using your WMI communication to communicate between your server and to your client. Okay, so I will select new rule, predefined. Now I will select WMI, Windows Management Instrumentation. I will say next. All the three selected. Next, allow the connection. This is inbound, so allow the connection is automatically selected. I will say finish. So you can see Windows Management, these rules have been created. Okay. Similarly, we need to create the outbound for WMI. So predefined and then Windows Management Instrumentation. Next. Next. Again, be careful. Allow the connection. Finish. Okay, if you are wrongly selected, block the connection, no problem, you can edit it and allow the later on, but it's always advisable to select it while creating the rules. Okay, so this one is done. Now next step is we have now allowed couple of services. Now we need to allow the actual ports through Windows Firewall, AD Windows Defender Firewall. So we need to repeat the steps to create one more inbound policy for SEPM ports. Okay, and then while creating that particular new inbound rule, we need to select the option as port. Okay, so go back here, I will go to inbound rules, right click, new rule. Here don't select predefined, we will select port. Okay, and I will say next. Now next step is select the port protocol type as TCP and enter the port numbers as defined. So there are many ports for the TCP. What I will do is I will copy these port numbers directly from my PPT and we will see, just a minute, whether we can copy it directly from here. Sorry. So these are the port numbers, right? So what I am doing is I am directly copying it, everything from here only. Copy, and now I will go back to my main system. I will paste it directly. You can manually enter also, but I don't want to give that much time, so I have just copied it and I will say next. So next step is select allow the connection, next, and then we need to select the profiles like domain, public, private, which all profiles you need to allow these ports. So we need to select all the profiles and say next. So I will do that. I will say allow the connection, next. All the three profiles are selected automatically. Next. Next is we need to give this particular rule a particular specific name. So I will give that SEPM services TCP inbound ports, something like that. You can give any specific name and click finish. So I will give, okay, and I will say finish. So you can see this particular inbound rule has been created for what the name specifies: SEPM, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, TCP type, inbound ports and inbound rules. Okay. Now next step is we need to repeat these steps for the same ports for our outbound rule also. So for creating a new outbound rule for the same TCP ports. So we'll go back here and I will right click on outbound rule. It's a new rule, and then I will select the ports again. I will say next TCP, and I will paste those ports again. I will say next, allow the connection, next, profile domain private public, next, and then I will give you the name. Okay, I will say finish. So same like we have created the SEPM TCP inbound rule, same we have created for the outbound rule also. Same ports. Next step is we need to again create couple of more rules for the UDP ports. So inbound and outbound rules for UDP ports 137, 138, 514. Okay, so I will come back here. Inbound rule, new rule, port, next UDP this time, and what are the ports required? 137, 138, 514. So 137, 138 and 514. Okay, so I will copy these ports, copy. Let's verify one more time. 137, 138, 514. Okay, this time UDP, and this is inbound. So I will say next, allow the connection, next, profiles are same, next, and now name. The same thing we need to do for the outbound also. Okay. I have mentioned just rules over here. Let me go to the properties and I will say ports. You can always edit it, no problem. Okay, so UDP outbound ports, TCP outbound ports. Same thing for inbound. UDP outbound rules, I will just make it as ports. And same thing here. Okay, so this is just for my understanding. I'm just renaming those rule names, you can give any name. So now we have opened, or we have given the exception for the required SEPM, TCP as well as UDP ports. Okay, now what are these ports, what are this usage, we have already seen in the previous theoretical session. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Now execute GP update /force command on all four when 2000 DC, when 10 CL and when 11 CL and SEPM systems. Now I will just give you a quick shortcut how to run the GP update from one machine only, because if I am logging to 4 different machines or opening a command prompt, it may take time. Let me just give you one small tip over here, how you can run the group policy update from your AD domain controller. So what I will do is I will open PowerShell, ISC console, run as an administrator. Okay, and now I will put one simple PowerShell command, invoke GP update. This is a simple command, and the options over here is you can give the computer name. Okay, so computer name, first name will be this machine only, so itself, so win 2022 DC. I will say enter. This is done. Now I just need to change the host name. The third machine will be win 11 CL and the last machine will be SEPM. Now I have run the GP update from all the 4 machines. Now if you are running it locally, the group policy update will run immediately, but this is a remote command what we have used through PowerShell. It may take 1 or 2 minutes more, but it will run on those machines, and it has not given any error. That means all the machines are properly connected to your AD. Okay, so communication is happening. So this we have done through PowerShell. Now next step is, now we need to install SQL 2022 server on our SEPM server as one of the prerequisite for your SEPM, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager uses SQL Server for storing its database. Okay. Now there are two differences over here. If you are having less than 500 clients, you can use SQL Express Edition. And if you are having more than 500 clients, you can use the SQL Standard or SQL Enterprise version. Okay. So I am currently using a full database of SQL evaluation version, but enterprise version. Okay, so let's map this SQL server ISO to our SEPM server. So I will go to my SEPM server, I will go to settings, and the DVD drive I will map my SQL server. This is enterprise and SQL 2022 CU16. It is already integrated with CU16. How I have integrated with the latest community update, the SQL server, that you can refer to my previous videos for those ones. Okay, I will say apply, I will say okay. Next step is, of course, through SEPM system, Windows Explorer, start the SQL server setup through D drive setup.exe. So we have mapped our ISO, it will be a D drive. I will start the setup.exe. Say yes. Next step is, we need to select the option once the SQL setup wizard starts. Click on installation, new SQL server standalone installation. So I will click on installation and I will say new SQL server installation. Next step is once the SQL installation wizard starts, on the edition window, select your SQL edition and product key if you are having one, and license acceptance, and click next. So currently I am using the evaluation version, so I will select evaluation. So I don't need to accept the license and now, because if you are having product key, then only those options will get highlighted. So I will say evaluation, I will say next. Next step is, of course, we need to accept the licensing terms and statements and click next. So I will accept the licensing terms. I will say next. Next is Microsoft update. We just need to click next. Again, for the product updates, we don't need to change anything. We will click on next. Now it will install the set of files and it will come to the Azure extensions. So next is we need to deselect this Azure extension for SQL Server because we don't require this Azure extension. So deselect this option and click next. I will deselect this. I will say next. And now we need to select the actual features, what all features we need to install for SQL Server. So on the feature selection, select your preferable SQL features to install and click next. So as of now, I'm just selecting a very basic and a very necessary particular feature, which is database engine services. I may choose other features also, but that will be an added load because invariably at the end of the day it will only use the database engine service. So I'm just selecting that feature only and I will say next. So on instance configuration, keep default instance and click next. So I will leave this instance as a default on next. On server configuration, verify all the values and click next. So we don't have to change anything over here. All the default options are correct. Collation is also correct. So I will say next. Next is on database engine configuration. Click on add current user and click next. So what I will do is I will click on add current user. So this will give this particular user the full rights for our database admin. So now you can see over here we have pushed our update policy through our PowerShell console. If you remember, it has just updated now. Okay, so it has taken some 4 or 5 minutes. Anyways, coming back to the SQL, so add current user over here and I will say next. And now on ready to install, click verify summary and click next. So I will verify the summary, all the additions and then whatever features we have selected, database engine services, everything is correct and I will say install. And so it will start installing my SQL server. It may take 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm pausing this video as of now. Once this SQL Server installation completes, then I will come back to you with the next steps. Okay. So now, as you can see, our SQL Server installation has been completed. All the required features got successfully installed. So I will say, let's move on to the next step. This we have already done. We have monitored the SQL installation process, and then on the complete window, verify that required features are installed successfully and click close. So I will click close now over here. I will close everything. And the next step is, of course, we need to restart this particular system once, because we have just installed SQL Server. Although it is not asking, but as I told many times before, it's always advisable to restart the machines once you are doing any major change. It is a basic rule for Windows. That's what I have learned in my 24 years of IT experience. So we have logged in with the SSM admin account again. So now let's move on to our next step. The next step is we need to install the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So once restarted, log on to SEPM system with SSM admin account that we have already done, and on SEPM server to the drive SQL Management Studio, we will launch the SSMS setup enu.exe. So let's go back here. Let's see whether our SQL server. Yes. So these two extra folders I have already copied in my ISO, so that it will be one master ISO for SQL Server. So I will go to the SQL Management Studio and I will launch the Management Studio installation wizard, and I need to click on install. So I'll click on install. So it will just take 2 minutes or so. By the time we will verify our next step. So monitor the SQL Management Studio installation. Now you can see our Management Studio setup has been completed. I will say close, go back to my. So click close once SQL Server Management Studio installation completes. That's already done. And now again we need to restart our system once. So I will close this, I will restart this. By the time it is restarting, let's move on to the next step. So once restarted, open your SQL Server Management Studio through Start menu. So click on Start and I will say Microsoft SQL Server Tools, SQL Server Management Studio. I will drag it up and now I will open it. Okay. Next step is through SQL Server Management Studio. Select the encryption level as optional and click connect. So we need to connect to our SQL server. We need to configure our SQL server for some basic settings. Okay, but before, let's say I will say select optional. Before clicking connect, I will just verify whether my SQL service is running or not, because sometimes, especially after restarting the server, SQL server service is stopped automatically. You can see over here, it is already stopped. I don't know, I will not say it's a bug from Microsoft or something, but most of the time it is like that only. But once you are configuring this SQL server for some additional services like SCCM, like SEPM, then the service will run automatically. But for the first time or something, the new installation, it is stopping somewhere. So I'm just starting it. I will just restart. So now it is running. Okay. So now I will say optional over here and I will say connect. So now we are connected to the SQL. Now we need to do some basic configuration for our SQL server in order to run it smoothly with our SEPM server, which we will be installing later on. So let's move on to the next step. So the first configuration is we need to go to the SQL server properties, and this is properties, and then we need to change the SQL server's memory to half of your system memory. Okay, so on SQL server properties page, set the minimum and maximum memory to preferably half of your system's memory and click OK. So my current, this particular system SCPM is having 24 GB of RAM, right? So preferably I will click on memory first. Preferably I will give 12 GB over here, so that it will not affect my overall system's performance. Okay, so this is not a hard and fast rule that you have to give only half of the memory or something like that, but this is a best practice. So what I will give 12 GB over here minimum also, and 12 GB for maximum also, right? So first of all, as you can see, the total memory of this system is 24 GB. So I will give 12 GB. Now how much will be 12 GB in MB? Simple, we will use the calc. Don't afraid to go to the basic steps always. Okay, 1024 into 12. So this much MB we need to give. I will copy this and I will give here. Simple. Okay, and I will say OK. So this will be our performance setting first of all for SQL. Otherwise SQL will eat your memory as much as it wants. So I will say OK. So whatever I explained, so I put it in the note also, that above step will ensure that SQL server will not cross 12 GB memory limit, and thus SCPM system's overall performance will not affect. Okay. Now next step is, from the main SQL Management Studio screen, expand the security, logins, and SCCM CV, SCCM admin, and right click on that particular user account and go to the properties. So from the main console, I will go to security, I will go to logins, and here it is the SCCM admin. I will go to properties of it. Now from login properties window, select server roles and select the DB server roles as shown in the sideline figure. Okay, and click OK and close the management studio window. So I need to give certain rights to my SCCM admin account. So I will go to my server roles over here, and don't give the rights which are starting with the hash values. Give the rights to the actual database values. So I will just give the rights to these values, this many. Okay, So my SSM admin are having all the database related access rights. What are the necessaries? Okay, and I will say okay now, and I will close this window. So now why this step is required again? So above step ensure that the SSM admin account will have a full DB server roles permissions. Okay, sometimes SQL server is always giving us error that your account is not having this access, that access. We will nullify all those errors from our prerequisite step only. Okay, most of the IT engineers or IT infrastructure I have seen in my 24 years of experience in IT, that they have not configured these basic steps, and then the big kind of and complicated issues occurs, and whatever we have found is like the permissions are not there, the basic step has not followed and all. So make sure you are always going by step for ensuring the smooth operation. Now next step is on the SEPM system, open the services console and locate the SQL server, MS SQL server service, and right click and go to properties of this service. So we'll go back to SEPM server, we'll open our services console, and I will go to SQL server MS SQL server service properties. And now what will be our next step? We need to give the service rights, the full rights, MS SQL service rights to SSM admin. So click on logon, change the logon account from default NT service to SSM admin account. Specify the SSM admin account's correct password. So I will go to the logon tab. I will click on browse. Locations, I will say entire directory, and now admin. Say sorry. SSM admin, I will say okay. Now I need to specify the SSM password. And I will say apply. Now you can see this account SSM admin has been granted to log on as a service right. Okay, I will say okay. The new logon name will not take effect until you stop and restart the service. So I will say okay over here, and I will restart this service. One. So you can see over here the logon as has been changed from NT to SSM admin account. Okay, so this step is completed. Again, why this step is required? So this is required for a proper communication between your SQL server and SEPM application, because SEPM is also using SSM admin account and your SQL is also using SSM account. Okay, these are very basic steps, but these are all very important in order to run the application. So let's move on to the next step. So we have already done this step. We have done the confirmation, and we have restarted the service also. Okay. So now we have done all our theoretical concept session, we have done all the prerequisite session, all the lab session, everything has been done. Now we will be actually installing our SEPM. Finally, we are installing our SEPM. So next step is map your SEPM Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager product ISO on SEPM VM system. So I will go back to my SEPM. I will close this. Go to the settings and browse. I will go to SEPM and SEPM 14.3 ISO, and I will say apply. Okay. This has been mapped. Next step is through SEPM ISO D drive, launch the setup.exe file. So it is D drive SEPM folder and then setup.exe. So I will open this. D drive SEPM folder and here setup.exe. I'll say yes. It will start our installation wizard in a minute. By the time it is starting, let's move on to our next step. Let's see. So on SEPM installation wizard, make sure that the first option, that is install the management server and console, is highlighted and click next. So now you can see the wizard has started and it has automatically taken the first option, install the management server and console. So I will say next. Next is, of course, we need to accept our licensing and agreement terms and click next. So I will say I accept, I will say next. Next is, it will show the free disk space and destination folder. So we need to review, and if required we need to change also, and then we will say next. So as of now I don't need to change anything. It is showing the disk space free as C drive, which is sufficient. The CPU is 1, physical memory is 24 GB. So everything is done. So now if I need to change the destination folder in production, you should do that. You should install your SEPM on D drive. But for this lab setup purpose, I am just installing on C drive. So if you are installing on D drive, let's say secondary partition, you can click browse and you can choose whatever path you require, like D drive and everything like that. But as of now, I'm not doing anything. So I'm just keeping it as a default one and I will say next. So next is, we need to click on install on ready to install wizard. Okay, so I will say install. So now it will start installing our SEPM software. So it will take 10 to 15 minutes. So I am pausing this video as of now, and once it is complete, I will come back to you with the next step. So it is now copying the new files, it is installing. And now the installation has been completed for the first phase. So install management server and console. This has been completed. Now let's move on to the next step. So this particular step we have already done. Monitor the SEPM installation. Now we need to configure the management server. So verify that the install the management server console phase is completed and click on next. So the next phase to continue with the configure management server. So I will say next over here, and now it will start our management server configuration wizard. This is the first time installation what we have done. That's why it is asking us to configure our management server, SEPM management server. So management server configuration wizard will load itself automatically. So that's done. And the next step is, now we need to select the configuration, that what is the configuration we need to load or to configure with our SEPM. Now there are various options. I will explain each option in detail now before clicking on next. So let's go back to our SEPM server. Now you can see over here there are three options available. So default options, default configuration is for the new installation if you are having fewer than 500 clients, 500 SEP clients. If you are having more than 500 clients, then the custom configuration is there. And the third option is there, that recovery configuration, that if you are already having SEPM server which you need to recover after the fresh installation, something like that, then we can select it with the recovery file with that option. Okay, so I will try to incorporate this particular option in the later video. Let's see whether we can recover it, but as of now I'm selecting the second option. Why? I will just explain. The default configuration will automatically install SQL Express Edition over here, but we don't require that because we have already installed our full-fledged SQL Server Enterprise, if you remember. So I am selecting the custom configuration. Although I am not having more than 500 clients, that doesn't make any difference. I am selecting this because I want to use my existing SQL installation, right? If you are again I am repeating, if you are selecting default, it will automatically install SQL Express. We don't require that. So because we have already installed SQL Server, so I am using custom configuration, and I will say next. But before that, let's move on to this thing. Yeah, so select your preferable option, custom configuration in this case, and click next. So this is the custom configuration I'm selecting, and I will say next. So what are these options? I have already explained to you. So default configuration for less than 500 SCV clients, custom configuration for more than 500 SCV clients, and recovery configuration to recover the previously installed SEPM configuration. Next step is select install my first site and click next. Since this is a fresh installation, so I will select the install my first site. I will say next. Our next step is verify the SEPM ports matrix and installation folder, destination folder, and click on next. So you can see over here there are various ports which are mentioned. We have already configured this port matrix in the previous steps. All those ports should be open from your Windows firewall or AD firewall or your actual network firewall, whatever your infrastructure requires. All those ports we have already configured to be open. Destination folder is correct, so I will say next. Till the time it is loading, we will see what will be our next step. So next step is we need to select our SQL database. What database we should use for SEPM configuration. Okay, so I will choose the Microsoft SQL Server database over here because we have already installed SQL Server, right? So I will go back here, and now I will select Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, now I don't want to select all these options. If you are having an expert database administrator or something like that, you may choose whatever you want to do with your SEPM database. You need to automatically truncate your database, or you need to rebuild the database. You can select those options if applicable to you. Okay, but as of now I'm not selecting those options. I'm just selecting SQL Server database, and I will say next. Next step is we need to create a new database. So I'm selecting that create a new database and click next. So create a new database, say next. So next step is we need to select the following options in order to authenticate with our database and SQL server. So authentication type, we need to select the Windows authentication, then Windows username will be your SCCM lab slash SCCM admin, and the Windows users password will be our SCCM admin password. So we need to select all these options. So first of all, I will say Windows authentication, port will be same, Windows username will be SCCM lab. Don't put .local, just put SCCM lab. Let me just be absolutely sure about it. Wait just a minute. You can see SCCM lab. Okay, same thing. We need to specify where, otherwise it will not connect. So SCCM lab slash SCCM admin. Okay, and now the password for SCCM admin. Okay, this is our SCCM admin credentials through which we are connecting to our SQL server for SEPM configuration or wizard. I hope this is clear. Okay, and once you are clicking next, we need to click on connect database and then no on warning page. So let's see whether it is connecting to our thing, connect database, and here we said no to let this Symantec Endpoint Protection to use the server IP address and host name to test its source. So we will require to say no over here, and now I will finally say next. Let's come back to this step. We'll see. So we need to click yes on file stream feature warning page. So I will say yes. Sorry. Again it is asking some confirmation. Let's see what our PPT says. Lot of confirmations and lot of prompts. So click yes on confirm confirmation page. So again I need to click on yes. Now next step is we need to specify our company name, then admin password and email address, and click next. Admin password. Okay, this is just an dummy email address I have just given just to complete the configuration. Okay, but in a real production scenario you need to give your company's official email address so that you will get all the notifications and alerts on that email ID. I hope I am clear. Okay, and if you are need to test this email address, you can directly click on send test mail and it will send that test mail on your this particular mail ID. As of now I'm skipping this step because I've just given one dummy kind of an email address. Okay, so once I'm clicking like click no to send the test mail confirmation. So if I'm clicking next, it will say that you do not choose to send the test email address. Do you want to send that email address? I will say no. The next step is we need to give one encryption password. So specify the encryption password for client communication and click next. So I will give the password. I will say next. Next is this is an optional step. We need to specify the partner information. So as of now, we don't require to put in anything on that. Since this is optional, but if you are having a valid partner information with you for Symantec, you can enter that information in this particular window. I will say next. Next step is again optional, although it is not showing as optional, but you can select whether your preferable option to send the data to Symantec to receive enhanced threat protection intelligence and all. So it will collect your logs on a Symantec server, but as of now I'm not selecting that option, so I will deselect this one. I will say next. So now you can see the database has been created and initialized. So it has started to build our SEPM database. So monitor the SEPM database creation process. So it will take 10 to 15 minutes or so. So I am pausing this video as of now. Once this is completed, I will come back to you with the next step. You can see it's almost done, 91%. So it will complete in a while. Now it has completed 100%. By the time it is, let's move on to the next step. So next step is click on finish to complete the SEPM installation and configuration, and to launch SEPM, that is Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console. Okay, so let's see, it will just finish. Now it has completed the configuration SEPM, and it is giving us option to automatically launch our Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. So I will leave it as selected, and finally I will click on finish. So I will close this. It will automatically launch our SEPM wizard. So you can see it has automatically started. Let's move on to our next step. So next step is on SEPM Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console. Provide the admin account credentials which we have specified in step number 62 and click on log on. So our username is admin and our password whatever we have specified in the earlier stage. Now you can see it is using the local port 8443. Now this is a local console. Okay, from this particular machine we have opened this console. Now before logging on, I will just exit it because this is automatically launched. I need to show you how you can launch it manually. So I am going to the start menu, and here you can see over here the web console is also there, then your Symantec local console is also there. So what you need to choose from here, this particular option, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Okay, I am clicking on this and it will launch my local console. Okay, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Here I need to specify the username as admin, then my password whatever we have defined earlier. It is using the 8443 port number, and I will say log on. And then warning security for your certificate, so I will say accept always. Now it is logging to my management server. Okay, by the time it is launching, now it has already launched. Okay, so let's move on to our next step. So review the getting started task and click close. So now these are some of the getting started, what you need to do, the required tasks. As the first log on, you can run the live update, you can activate your product, you can install the client software, everything. You can launch the cloud, you can move the clients between groups. All those tasks are very basic and very common tasks for your SEPM configuration or day-to-day task BAU activities. Okay, so as of now I'm not clicking on any task. I will create part 2 video for this series and we will see each of these tasks in detail. Whatever the tasks are there, we will practically execute all those tasks. Okay, so I will close as of now, and let's move on to the next step. The last step is review the SEPM Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager main console. So this is my main console of SEPM, and you can see there are no clients installed as of now. You can see it is showing no clients installed. All the summaries, it will populate itself with the number of clients once I start installing those clients and all. So all those options we will see later on, as I said in the part 2 video. Okay, so as of now our SEPM installation, console installation as well as the basic configuration has been completed. Okay, so thanks all for your time to see this particular video. This is Swaroop IT Solutions. If you like this particular video, please share it with your IT colleagues, with your teammates, with your friends, and do subscribe to this particular channel. Thanks all for your time. Have a good day.